This is a pretty good closure. I mean, not my old buddy here, and Charles Sappenfield, some years ago at an ACSA meeting, said, well, you got to come to Ball State one of these times. So finally, Charles, here I am. Finally, it's been a while. It's an honor to be here. I've been using those jars all my life, you know, and it's. I guess I start. Okay, turn them down and. Oh, are they on? I got to turn them on. Technology pause here. Now they should go. I push both on off. Beats PowerPoint anyway, right? Yes. Thank you, I owe you that pen. And they need to go back to 0. Thank you. Well, I'm good at ad-libbing because this is. I remember one time it might have been that ACSA meeting where they dropped my slides on the floor in San Francisco. Remember that one? And that was the ultimate travesty. And I've learned to cope since then, so no problem. To talk about architecture for me means talking about a special realm that I've kind of grown up in my practice. And it's a realm that travels through time unbelievably. The sky is transformed now, and the sky has a signature, and it's a cultural artifact. Look, this is looking out off my balcony toward the Rio Grande and the mountains beyond. And the contrails in the sky describe trajectories of motion, and they're like the Santa Fe Trail ruts in some ways, but they're ephemera rather than a permanent kind of trace. And compared to the trace you see on the right, which is Inscription Rock, El Morro, near Grants, New Mexico, this is really conquistador graffiti. You know, somebody passed by named, what was his name? Ramon Garza or Larza Huido passed by in 1709. That inscription is just as fresh as if it were done yesterday. So there's a timeless quality about the land there, and the landscape apparitions that the lecture refers to, talk refers to, has to do with landform becoming architecture, maybe, where you kind of blur your eyes, and it's either landscape or it's an architectural piece in silhouette. In New Mexico, there's this mythic time is marked by solstice events, and Chaco Canyon in particular on the right. That's a sun dagger atop Fajada Butte, where on solstice, that moment of sunrise in the winter, it strikes a mark on the rock through a crevice. And an artist named Steve Fitch re-illuminated the petroglyphs of the Southwest and showed them in ways that they were originally seen, with fire illuminating them rather than just daylight. In this journey through the landscape, through these landscapes of power and beauty, it's important for me, and has been, to always refer to the timeless possibility. In Rome, the Pantheon, for me, is an icon. And that watch, you can go, they're really cheap. They're only $100. I want you to go out and buy one at the it's your nearest museum shop. But the Pantheon, one thing that's really messing me up is I've got the trays reversed. So could you reverse the trays? Otherwise, you would never know, but it's driving me crazy. You know that feeling of, like it's looking at something backwards? So just switch them, flip them over if you would, please. Anyway, the Pantheon, an icon of timelessness. It began as a pagan temple. It metamorphosed into a consecrated church. Now it's a consecrated tourist stop, or whatever you call it. And through all those metamorphoses, its power persisted as an authentic place of original place of beauty, and irrespective of its program, it just had that quality that great architecture has, that transcends program, where the program's kind of like a layer of clothing that architecture wears, and the architecture below, the naked architecture, is the architecture of a timeless possibility. I was watching that Danny DeVito movie, The Renaissance Man, the other night, and he was talking about Leon Battista Alberti, the great Renaissance man, who was a poet, philosopher, architect, painter. And Danny DeVito's coaching these, if you saw the movie, coaching these army recruits, and or teaching them Shakespeare. And he said, remember, it's okay to be an athlete. Alberti could stand in front of someone and in one jump over them and land on the other side. And at the same time, be a poet and philosopher. So the body in architecture has always been important to me, to work your body, for me, running marathons, skiing, etc. And to prove it, there I am skiing one of my buildings. I'm getting air off of a clear story of a building in Taoski Valley. So the body in space. There's some light that's sort of hitting the screens. Can we lose that light? That one? That doesn't need to be here, does it? Try to lose that one if you can. Whoever's the light pro here. So on through a little, and whoever is up there, I thank you for your help. And could you check focus every now and then? I can't tell back here if this one's really in focus or not. Just sort of spot check them, please. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, no, keep going. The beginning of my not being a regionalist, I decided it was no more Mr. Adobe. I was out of New Mexico, and I won this competition on the right for the Arizona Science Center. The Arizona State University Fine Arts Center, and then later the Wyoming Heritage Center. It's almost like a great ancient helmet of copper or a surrogate mountain. I was reading John McPhee. McPhee is so great and so inspirational for architects because he's sort of a closet geologist, and he follows geologists around and interprets culture through their eyes, tours these amazing places of myth and beauty of the West. And he wrote a book called Rising from the Plain, and it was very inspirational for me when we're thinking of this building in Wyoming on the left slide. It made me realize that that mountains are on the move. Mountains are still in motion. There's something called the Laramide orogeny near Laramie, Wyoming, where the mountains are actually coming up out of the ground rather than wearing down like the rest of the Rockies. So this is a mountain rising from the plain. And on the right, Arizona State University, really a processional building, a choreographic kind of building. A bridge that goes nowhere but takes you anywhere on a house near Phoenix. And on the right, a house that completes the X of the Rio Hondo Canyon near Taoski Valley, if you get the right camera angle. The Venice Beach House on the right, a house that aims like an observatory toward Asia. The color of the big pivot window is the color of the Japanese flag. Granite foreground, covered with water. The timeless place, the place of the original LA basin rather than the topicality of all of the interventions in the LA basin, sort of the Hollywood definition of LA. This is more like an armature of bones along the sea with a granite foreground. And in Dallas, a house that is grounded in the substrate of Turtle Creek with limestone ledges and a sky ramp that zooms into the trees for my bird watching clients. Check the focus, please, again on the left one. Thanks. The Mandel Weiss Forum, a theater on the UC SD campus, with an enigmatic wall that foregrounds the building that you pass through in a Lewis Carroll fashion through the looking glass to discover the realm of theater beyond, the threshold between reality and dream. And on the right, a solstice wall at an elementary school in Tucson that marks time, marks celestial moments for kids. They come out at night, they come out at dawn summer or winter solstice sunrise. There are even cultural marked where on Cinco de Mayo, for the great national holiday of Mexico, an alignment connects through one of the apertures to a coin embedded in the Sorcerer's Terrace, which is the terrace that supports the solstice wall. The Arizona Science Center in Phoenix, with the planetarium, you see in the kind of the middle of the right slide, focusing toward the sky, almost in a James Turrell fashion of students that do Camp House on the building lie down up there and gaze at the sky, see a bird pass by, maybe a 737, maybe a ray of light, where the building itself becomes a kind of focal observatory, much like the Venice House. In Morocco, in Agadir, the Palm Bay project, gazing across the ocean, the Atlantic shore, and arcing breakwater, protecting the dune line from intrusion of the brackish water, protecting the eucalyptus grove beyond, and seen in the Scirocco on the left. These are all models done in studio. I think the thing about looking at cultures, alternative cultures, for inspiration, in this case the Moorish culture of North Africa, is so important to me. When I was a student, I was mentioning to Joe today, Bannister Fletcher, our history book, didn't talk about the Maya, didn't talk about Borobudur and Java, didn't talk about the great cultures of Asia. So I tend to go fishing theoretically in the Pacific Ocean more than I do the Atlantic Ocean, because it's really polluted with Eurocentrist fish, the Atlantic that is. So I encourage you all to do that and to understand that the inspiration, whether it's theoretical, whether it's coming from, say, French literary criticism through people like Derrida, which is wonderfully inspirational, needs to be balanced with Ryoanji, the great temple of Kyoto, or with Borobudur, as I mentioned, or with the Maya. So the Pacific Ocean laps on the shores of all these other places. Africa, for me, has been an inspiration at so many levels. So I really try to go to cultural roots, learning some Arabic words to understand Qamar, the importance of the moon tower, Bab Mecca, the Mecca gateway in the complex on the right, and the Scirocco, how it comes off the desert and blows through the building. And that's really me blasting the model with a CO2 fire extinguisher. That's our technology level in our model shop. In Las Vegas, there's an unbuilt project at the corner of Desert Sands and Las Vegas Boulevard called Atlantis. And ITT Sheraton asked me to design a hotel for that site. And when they saw it, they thought they made a big mistake when they saw what I'd done. So it's in my spiritual savings account now. So this is like a pep talk for all of you colleagues who maybe have buildings in the drawers that never got built or whatever, and students who've shredded forever and haven't realized every project. Doesn't matter. It goes into a spiritual savings account. It fills you up. It comes out, and lots of other guises later on, so don't worry about it. You're seeing the building being cruised by a stealth, an F-117A. They were squadroned at Nellis Air Force Base near Las Vegas for a while. Of course, you never saw them because they were stealths, but they were out there. And I've got a kind of stealth fetish. If you look at my website, there's a stealth cookie jar under the things. Click on things and you'll see it. Anyway, it's a palace of ice, a palace of crystal. Crystal is lucky for gamblers. Some of them, wear them as they gamble. And it has a sense of evocation of some strange tectonic aberration where maybe Atlantis crept over through tectonic plate shifts to the desert and erupted with fusion energy blasting out of the desert floor, with a cyborg field in the foreground of the casino hotel, and the patrons ready to roll there on the right. I didn't know quite how to draw. I don't draw that often. I usually work in clay, but I had to figure this out and plan. So I couldn't draw, so I decided to detach myself from authorship, from talent, from drawing, and just shatter glass and see how the glass pieces turned out. And did that, and Polaroid photographed them, scanned them in, and digitized them, and they turned up in the model, as you see on the left. That's looking from a guest room down on the Atlantean Plateau to the vortex of the pool. The vortex is on the left. You see it in the center of the slide. I'm a PADI diver, and so I thought that people could come here with certification and rent equipment and dive in this 80-foot deep saltwater vortex. I should find the pointer here, I guess. Get that pointer for me. Figure out where the button is, man, will you? Anyway, you can dive in the vortex. Which one is it? Right there. Thank you. And you can sort of cruise out into these chambers and channels and come up to the surface, look through a glass section of floor at somebody pulling a slot handle and wave at them from below. I think surrealism is certainly part of Vegas and part of the desert. And I guess I've had my full dose of that, living there since '54 and mutating into whatever I am now in the desert. The entry to the casino, a great snout, a kind of cyborg arm. The entry here, two waterfalls flanking that. ITT Sheridan said, pull all the stops. I took him seriously. So that faceted geometry of Atlantis is played out in different ways in other projects. It's sort of been I guess, a fetish of mine to be interested in faceted geometries. This is the project I'm going to show you next. These are the wide open spaces of New Mexico. That's for real. That's all that's there. Here's my clay model of the Spencer Theater. I call it Sierra Blanca. It aims at Sierra Blanca, which is the great mountain behind it, aims directly at it. And its alignment is a mythic alignment connecting Sierra Blanca and in the other direction back this way to another mountain range, kind of off the page of the model. This is my sketch medium. I rarely draw. When I draw, I make collages, and I'll show a couple of them later. But I draw in clay. I draw 3D, and they're not massing models. They really are about plan and section. They're a thoroughgoing understanding of the building, and that one's about, to scale, probably about, I don't know, 3 by 6, big field of clay, and then the building erupting out of it. Check the focus, please. Thank you. You're doing an amazing job up there with baby and everything. Thank you. Joe, she gets a raise. So the Sierra Blanca, the surrogate mountain, Sierra Blanca, the white limestone Sierra Blanca, looking toward the actual peak. And my stealth fetish, actually, as though a stealth fighter had crashed into the side of a great limestone cliff, really more like a chandelier, a celebration of theater. The notion that a chandelier can be habitable with 1,000 lights on the vertices of the triangulated space frame of the lobby. This summer, 68 steps coated with water coming off of a skill lip here at the theater club patio. You can see a lobby glowing beyond. In the winter, white mountain. The faceted geometry of the shell of the lobby relating back to Las Vegas, perhaps, and my interest in that kind of crystalline form, and the fractured glass balustrades of the Grand Stair pick up on that. In Minnesota, I wanted to ground the project of the McNamara Alumni Center of the University of Minnesota in place as deeply as I could. So I made a collage piece that started with a road cut, moved through time, including Chippewas, Ojibways, learning from the Native American layer of the stratigraphy of the road cut that I imagine with each project, tying it to place, a landscape apparition growing out of substance of place and research, to the loons, to lots of snow, walleye, Garrison Keeler, Judy Garland from Minneapolis, Father Hennepin. All these is sort of time travel, the iconic grouping of barn, silo, and farmhouse that you see with the perfect windrow from the sky when you fly into Minnesota, maybe even see from the air here too. Anyway, that all, and Bob Dylan, I won't forget him, Highway 61. He was from there. So this all adds up in my feelings to a building finally, and Split Rock on the North Shore of Lake Superior was an icon that I thought was an amazing thing to relate to, because in Minnesota I'm used to a lot of topo from the west, and Minnesota doesn't have much, in the Mesabi Range a little bit. but it's split rock. You have this wonderful formation. So the building began to take on a character of a fractured monolith. Check focus over here, please. You can see the second model. My first model was a clay model, and then an acrylic model showing a kind of the assembly of the building from rays that come across flanking plazas, later developed in this plaza scheme, which is now constructed. You won't see it in the slides because it was just finished. Plaza that foregrounds the building. But the monolith coming out of the earth and kind of reforming as though the earth was disrupted and then reformed to become this monolith. This is all the plaza now, all developed. I had a shot of that. So the monolith then is a memorial hall. The blade of the building that intersects the monolith is a mixed bag of university functions, from some enrollment functions to the University Foundation, the alumni offices. The Regents boardroom is in the building. The Great Hall, the Memorial Hall, becomes like a theater. It ranges from uses like tailgating for ice hockey and basketball to weddings, to blowouts of all sorts, parties, to investitures of chairs and honoring Nobel Fellows. I received an honorary doctorate here and was in my space, which was one of the thrills of a lifetime. So the monolith then leans back. It is sculpted and fractured. And I'm going to show you why it leans back on this side in a second on one of the interior shots. There was a memorial arch that was part of a memorial stadium that was on the site before the project came along. It was torn down in the 80s, but a fragment was retained of this panel of the facade. And when I was engaged to do this building, my client said, well, Antoine, you need to incorporate this in the facade of the building somehow. And I thought, no, it don't quite work that way. I don't think I can pull that off, but let's invite it inside to Memorial Hall. So that sloping facet I showed you externally defines the slope of the Memorial Arch. It's 55 feet high, to give you the sense of scale. Weighs tons, and it leans out at you like a painting. It is sort of hung as an artifact symbolically on the wall. And you walk through the arch into the heritage galleries of the university. So it's another kind of time travel where you move through time to engage history of the campus. And the lining is wood, polished granite, coated with water. Very Minnesotan in terms of materials and the natural realm that is so accessible there. The granite skin also. You can see the sort of theater of encounter where Margaret Carlson, the head of the Alumni Association, might pop out onto her balcony and have a conversation with someone below. Or Jerry Fisher, the foundation head, or the regents can pop out above and take a look down below and become part of a ceremony. There's theatrical lighting affixed to all these facets of the copper body. Now the body of the building that cuts through is the same patinaed copper, and it's smooth and planar outside, but when it comes inside, then it becomes balconies, stairs, transitional levels between different program elements of the building. It's pretty noticeable on campus now. Now, what I like about it was that the Frank Gehry's Weissman Museum is at the other side of campus. It's sort of the other gateway. This is the north gateway. So after that, I could kind of relax, and they understand that you could get you didn't need to relate to this cornice necessarily. I respect this cornice and I respect these kind of buildings, but I really think that in the new millennium, when the university is putting itself forth as a great research institution and an institution like the stature of Ball State, where you are promoting your academic life, your pedagogy, I think it's okay to go for it and to move into the new millennium in new ways. Same thing same attitude as Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York. This is my first clay model. It's a building that really defines a bunch of trajectories of pedestrian movement, of campus movement. Whoops, back there. I need my tool belt for all this stuff. Anybody have a tool belt? This guy, I know you have one, that's for sure. Okay, so the campus housing is in this direction, so you approach the building there, and there's an entry there. The library and the main quad is up here, so you approach it, and there's an entry here. There are actually actual limestone boulders that are sort of glacial anomalies that are on the site that erupt into these courtyards. So you go past glacial form and boulders to enter the building. Then if you want to go to the pond, which is a great place for lovers, you climb over the building and down this long stairway. If you want to cut through and go to town, which is over here off the page, you cut through the building to a little courtyard here and then on through to another path that all the students know, sort of through alleys and backyards to get to town. So it's a building that's a trap. It traps you. And it's an interdisciplinary art center called the Tang Teaching Museum. You might have a seminar conducted by an anthropologist, an archaeologist, a poet, and a painter. And the idea was to have students brush by that, even if they weren't directly engaged with the class, then they could at least pick it up peripherally as they move through the building and cut through it. And maybe at the same time, some art rubbed off on them because it's an art museum as well as a teaching museum. This is a format for performance piece staged in the building. It was called the Settee Cage Tango. And it's where the audience would do different tasks, like this one's water the plants, were set up here. And the audience would become a participant in this interdisciplinary engagement of art, technology, and pedagogy, interdisciplinary intention. So the clay model then evolved to this white model, and you can see the wonderful route up and over the building. As you go up and over, you can visually eavesdrop into the building, into activities that are going on. You can cut through it at ground level, as I mentioned. And I needed to know about snow, so my time spent skiing my building really helped a lot. I learned about snow dams and ice dams and cold roofs and all the stuff that you need in snow country, and brought it to New York. I thought this was a really great thing to bring my learning curve to North Country and not always be associated with the desert. I get kind of tired of that, being called a desert architect. I mean, of course it's in my blood, it's in my spirit, it's my spiritual home. But I think regionalism is portable if you do it right. When you learn in the desert about winds and sun and the forces that assault a building, that's translatable to other places quite readily. So that's part of my pitch when I try to get a project. No more Mr. Adobe. I can deal with snow or whatever. So here's the descending stairway, seen in a couple of different shots. And here it is going up and going down. There's the pond beyond. That's the kind of greensward quad of the campus with other buildings wrapping around it. And this building looks back at the campus sort of in another kind of observatory fashion. I think buildings should frame views. I really talk more about apertures than windows when I talk with my team in Charette's in the studio. An aperture has an obligation. It frames something. It's sort of like a Zen notion of a view seized and brought into your spirit. A window is just a W word. I mean, try not to use it. Use the A word, aperture. More exciting, more of a responsibility to do something with it. The level changes of the museum that are quite complex sectionally. These are costumes that dancers wore. This is an exhibition called Scenes of Sound. And an opening night, the reception, the dancers wore these and moved through the crowd. Stainless steel, kind of dull, bead blast stainless steel, natural block, glass, looking really good in snow. Joe mentioned the Austin City Hall. It's in construction right now. When I went to work in Austin, it was a living hell at first. It's Austin. And we put up a website with a kind of a too premature a scheme to even show anybody, and the city talked me into doing it. And there were like 800 hits in 2 or 3 days, completely trashing me. And running me out of town on a rail, effectively. But I took advantage of it, and I said, okay, I'm gonna make a matrix of all your comments about this concept, and I'm gonna address every one of them. I'm gonna come back and show you how the building will address every one of them. So what it did was sort of flush out all of the kind of spleen venting that needed to go on, in Austin, that needs to happen all the time. And it turned into a building. I'm not going to show you the first scheme because it's really embarrassing, and I deserved all of the web hits. But the one that, as it's turned out, I like it now, and it's a bronze-skinned building, bronze patination, and it has geometries that relate to the hill country, the strata. The strata of the hill country that geologically are referred to as balcones, balconies, and they are limestone strata. So there's a limestone base that forms the condition of connection to the plaza and symbolically to the earth, with strata above it that are metal that layer up toward the sky. There are a lot of green moves in this building. Green architecture for me is really, calling it that, such a mistake, because architecture is so complete. To have someone characterized as a green architect, as I have been, I was on Good Morning America as a green architect, I thought that was really kind of bad, and I tried to explain that any good architect, anybody thinking about their work, of course you're going to be green, of course you're going to consider direction of sun, you're going to consider where the winds come from. You learn all this working in New Mexico quite vividly. So back in the 70s, when I did my first work, I called it ecological planning. I didn't know what to call it. But this building in Austin, of course, has that mandate. It's the LEED system. It's a LEED silver mandate. And it has things like a photovoltaic array that is a trellis. The new technologies of PVs can be mounted on a clear matrix, so that they actually form a sunshade while they're being also a collector of energy. So that kind of interplay between technology and just the delight of shade patterns is a good way to think of that, and not always just sort of the rhetoric of the scientific rhetoric of green architecture, but more the emotional rhetoric, where the winds come from. I remember in Rome, I went to down into an excavation below Santa Maria in Lucina, one of the churches there. Almost like you're blindfolded and you're taken somewhere as a surprise. I went down and they turned the lights on. I was below an apartment building, maybe 2 stories down. There were huge stones covered with water that had inscriptions on them. And it was a sundial of Augustus. It's a soccer field scaled sundial. And for fall, and there were all these inscriptions. I was just seeing a postage stamp section of it. And for fall, it said, when the winds come. So the Romans defined time, marked time emotionally, rather than, hey, it's fall now. It was defined as with passion. So green architecture is about that for me. And this building has many moves. The PVs. This is an induction wall, a chimney effect of a double skin glazed wall. Lots of trellises around the building for sun control. Good thermal stability with the heavy masonry, stone masonry substrate. Parking layered below with limestone ledges descending into the parking structure below. You can't see it in the shot. Maybe another shot. Yeah, this one where the limestone ledges over here come down and join actual limestone below the bottom of the parking structure, and light is brought down into a parking structure in a different way than the usual rabbit hole kind of entry. The lobby is a succession of levels, bridges that interconnect across the lobby to define a kind of theater of encounter like you would have in a city like Austin. There are musical performances at every council meeting. Serious ones. There's a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan statue there, which tells you something right away near the building. And Willie's from there, and Janice was from there. So the bridges that cross the lobby are rather theatrical. City Hall is very relaxed there. It's not a sort of coat and tie City Hall. It's much more Austin and relaxed. And here's the limestone ledges that descend into the parking area in this shot. The photovoltaic. It's so great there that the power company is actually subsidizing the PVs. They're springing for the cost of the PVs as an alternative energy demonstration. This spike comes out over 2nd Street. You drive under it in your car. The building doesn't need a sign. It will be given, I think of it as an armadillo tail, actually. This is armadillo country. In fact, the shell is kind of a carapace of faceted geometries that form the building. So that's happening. And then diagonally and up to the left in Tacoma, Washington on the map is the new museum for Tacoma, the Art Museum. Mount Rainier, this is another thing, I'll just get this out of my system. It's that Eurocentrist bias thing. This is named for a guy named Rainier, who was one of George Vancouver's buddies back in England, when Vancouver, came up and down the coast and named everything. And Rainier never saw this mountain. This mountain is really called Tahoma, and it means some profound, Native American. It's a Native American evocation that goes back forever, and that's where Tacoma came from, the name of the city. So I never call this Rainier anymore, and I'd appreciate it if you did. You could call it Tahoma. You buy into that? Across the country, if you look at, if you read a book called Songlines by Bruce Chatwin, dealing with the Aboriginal Dreamtime and how songlines define the landscape of Australia, you realize that there's a way of mapping space and iconic landscape with stories, with a narrative that might be a mythic cosmological narrative that goes back forever in the case of the Aborigines. Bruce Chatwin, Songlines, you got to read it as an architect or an architecture student. You realize that in Australia there's a story behind every landform. Some mythic encounter, but it's between mythic animals or tribal dreamtime legends or whatever. And in this country, because we have this amnesia about our origins, because we've been here such a short time, except for native peoples, we just name things, for some guy usually, or some soldier or whatever. And it's okay, I think, to do that, but it would be really nice to rename this country. Go to Mount Whitney and find out what it really was called and what that name meant. And go to the Mississippi. That's a good name. That's an ancient name. Some of them hung on. Anyway, this building. This is the end of my diatribe about this. That's the last time I'm going to get into this. Okay, but so don't forget it though. Big time in my personal cosmology. So at the museum, this aims at Tahoma. This alignment through a plaza, foregrounding the building, is right at the mountain. It nails the alignment. And on these sites, we take transits out early on and shoot vertical elevations and horizontal angles to nail these moments in the landscape. So when you look out of the building, it really works. The building then unfolds and wraps around a series of galleries. Go through public spaces here. Whoa. And then onto an axial alignment that looks toward an art piece, an embedded art piece, and I call it the Mist Moss Garden, and that's that opening there. Here there are lobby functions, cafes, museum store, kids' artworks, programs up here, a library. But the real core is to travel down this alignment, travel through these galleries, wrapping around the stainless steel piece. The Mist Moss Garden is embedded within. You look down, here's that alignment I talked about coming from the entry. There's a 45-degree polished stainless steel mirror that reflects into mirrored glass facets that surround this Mist Moss Garden. It ties you back to ancient time. It's a rock, the stone of the place, the mist issuing from the stone, moss growing in the interstices of the rock formations. An attempt at drawing it. When I draw, I use pastel and ink when I do draw, and I couldn't come close to drawing the intention, so we just kept modeling it. Finally, we took a laser, and the building's about a lot of other things. I just wanted to talk about this because it's the first impression that there's an artwork embedded in the building, and it's very, very enigmatic. You really don't know what it is or what it's about. So we shot lasers around the mirrors to get alignments and drew those alignments finally to create a matrix of in optics, when you have an angle of reflection that equals angle of incidence, and angle equals the angle of reflection. So if we had a laser and you were tracking all around, it would just keep going, following that around, 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 around. Versailles Hall of Mirrors on psychedelics kind of thing. And around and around and around, till finally you defined a matrix, a grid of stone. So the stone now responds to that optical intention of what you would see, how you would define not a grid, but a series of alignments and trajectories on the ground plane. And then at times, I imagine bringing a laser into the building and doing it to show and having it kind of track. And you need some mist to do it, so the mist is there, no problem. San Diego Padres ballpark is, for me, I was a born again fan, because I grew up, before I went to the desert, as a kid, I was a fan of the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm a Midwesterner by birth. Actually, I'm Lebanese. I was born in Lebanon, Missouri, in the Ozarks. I know what hillbillies are about. Got that blood. So leaving the Cardinals to go to Albuquerque with the, AAA Dodgers team, the Albuquerque Dukes, didn't quite cut it for me. I'd been around Stan Musial's aura, people like that. Slaughter, Marty Marion, and Dizzy Dean. And so Padres was an opportunity for me to rekindle all that. So I made a big collage piece, and this is one of the pieces I referred to. You saw the one in Minnesota, and other ones I'm going to show you. So, the scene of 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the apes are losing it over the black monolith, and there's one that has a bone in his hand. It looks like a baseball bat. So I don't know if you can see it, but he's in there swinging that bone. So this collage goes through time from those apes in 2001, somewhere in there. Oh, there they are. See that bat? And the bone turned into a baseball bat, the way I did it in the collage. And there are quotations about the poetics of baseball. Giamatti is a Yale scholar and poet who was also baseball commissioner. He wrote a great book called The Great and Glorious Game. You should check it out if you're a fan. Anyway, there are a lot of people in here. Tony Gwynn, of course, big time, silver bat hero of mine, along with Stan Musial. The evocations of baseball and place, of San Diego as a place and baseball as the substance of the program of the building. So all that added up to Padres Gardens. And how you make that leap from a collage, from a research enterprise that you do, in your work, it's mysterious, isn't it? I mean, how you make that leap. And I can't describe how it happens, except, trust me, it does. It shows up. This isn't for naught. I mean, I don't think there's a building in here that's anything literal, but just the juice, that you get, the kind of a charge from this study happens. Now, I know that a number of you have to leave to watch the game any moment now, so I'm going to speed up here. I'm going to kick in the turbo now and go and finish up fast. I suggested that we have a monitor. Joe suggested we have a monitor in here with the game on it. What about it? Can we do that?
Just take your time.
Okay, if you say so. Great. Okay. No, I'm gonna. This can be arca torture, if I get into one of my things where I just, so many divergent digressions, you'll drive you crazy. Padres Gardens, the seating bowl, the stadium, and then instead of all the stuff that the program of the team offices and concessions under the grandstands, how about pulling them out like drawers to make gardens and terraces out of sandstone, matching the color of the cliffs at Torrey Pines near La Jolla. So Padres Gardens. And also I thought of the talus coming off of a seamount, and cruise ships too, white steel and fabric. So my first sketch was that clay model of the ballpark, showing the terraces erupting out of the flanks of the grandstand, and then a drawing that looked like a cruise ship. And I've got this San Gimignano fixation that many male architects have so these towers were part of the scheme initially, and they became actually parts of the scheme. They are lighting towers and special high-end seats for subscribers. So the towers persisted. We did some serious value engineering, so we cut down the quantity of them. I just want to tell you, for my AIA colleagues, how many AIA colleagues are here? Okay. My new cards, my business cards I've printed up, they say Antoine Predock, value engineer. I'm just getting real about what I really do, you know, what we all do all the time. Forget this architect stuff, we're value engineers. So anyway, this is the VE version. It's still hanging in though, it's got some towers. It has the terraces that look toward the harbor. There's a wonderful sight of, you know, looking at cruise ships, looking at across the Coronado Island, naval operations, F-16s zooming by. Park in the Park is an actual city park outside. This is a 400-foot center field fence with a park outside it, surrounded by retail and office functions. So it's a great building to do the cruise in. You know how baseball fans lap the ballpark. Well, this time you can go out, and if you want a cheap seat, you can buy a $5 ticket. You can bring your doggy and your family and have a picnic on what we call Picnic Hill and look across into the field at a great distance. These are all studio models, the ones like this. This is a huge model. I can't stand doing the finished models on the previous slides. Those were done in a model shop in El Segundo under our supervision. This is how we really work. And the digital stuff, I pretty much like it. And I have great digital animals on my team, but I'm totally illiterate. I'm one of the last persons in the world to go online, really. But I like the stuff, and this is a good shot, pretty good shot of it in the context of downtown. So that's in construction now, moving along. This is the University of New Mexico School of Architecture. I'm trying to show you now just projects that are current and heading down the road. This one is a competition that we won. And the iconic piece here is a huge concrete wall that's a kind of new inscription rock. And my idea is that students will help form this concrete wall, and we'll put stuff in it. We'll all work together, and we'll put stuff in the formwork that marks the time. It's like a time capsule that's alive, that you see for eons. We mark the time. We talk about architectural history. We talk about solstice alignments, particular apertures that frame views. But it's also an energy thermal stability piece that has great thermal mass. And it's skinned in certain areas with glass for a trauma wall effect. This also has inductive airflow through a very thick double glazed section. The main thing is, though, that it shows off on Highway 66 to the passersby. We know, and I think your president probably realizes, that these are the lights that are on all the time, this building. And they never go out, and that's our life. And it never stops, you know, it's still that way. Although I do not pull all-nighters anymore. That's a policy. You know, too old for that. Done my share, paid my dues, it's over. But I don't mind my team doing it. No problem. In fact, if I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, I just wake up, for whatever, I'll call in, just let them know that Big Brother is out there. For a long time, my house was in the middle of our studios, actually for 30 years. And I moved to another location because I finally was driving me crazy. And, good crazy. So we know that it's a life you define by your work. We don't have jobs. We work, but it's not going to work. It's just it's life, right? It's different from other things. Now, I think an accountant can be that way. If you do it right and have that belief system. But it seems like we all have that virus. We got it. You catch it in first-year studios if you're lucky, and then you just sort of the virus takes hold, and it's a good virus and never goes away. So anyway, Highway 66 runs right by the site. This is the Frontier Restaurant right across the site on 66. There's a projection of Tina Turner in Beyond Thunderdome. We thought we'd have film series projected on the wall so passersby in their low riders on Highway 66 could see the action of an architecture school unfolding. Lights on all the time, people hanging over the balconies, a marquee that blasts out of the building that's a catwalk within the building. The same metal coming out to be an LED Jenny Holzer kind of array for the campus. Whoops. Pushed the wrong one. So it's a building that's very communicative. It has the iconic wall with very controlled views out through it from within studio spaces. Big open loft studios on the ground level. This diagonal movement defines a shortcut from the building over to Kinko's, number one. And then in the other direction to the Fine Arts Library over here where the architecture collections are. And we're now bringing the Fine Arts Library into the building, so that's going to be a good cultural, social admixture to have that in there. Pools of water that are cisterns for passive cooling effect in particular. A building that it's losing it. It's losing it. Get a fire extinguisher. Anyway, the catwalks up above. I promise you, let me see if the button's stuck. It was the button being stuck. So just cruise back into the corresponding number there, please. That'll be easy to do, I'm sure. So the studios are open lofts with mezzanine catwalks at mid-levels between each studio, so you can pop down to a crit room to do a quick pin-up in a glass cube protected by the great concrete wall coming off of these catwalks. So there's ready access between levels and mid-levels. The model shop is really featured prominently below this basketball court terrace looking toward the Sandia Mountains. Joe, they haven't bought into the basketball goal up there yet. I'm still working on that. Got it? Thank you. And then the 66 here, the life of the building, totally expressed that way. When I was in Jujuy, Argentina, this happened, and I sang a song. I could sing that song. Viva Jujuy, viva la Puna, viva mi amor, viva my what? ¿Quién habla español? Mal hecho, no? Mal cantado, no? You're laughing. Ándale, pues. I'm coming up there, man. I'm coming up. They dumped the trays, Joe. Huh? Yeah? The power? Okay. That would be right. Well, we can go with one side of slides. I mean, that's going to completely ruin my whole trip and mess my head up really badly. But we better keep rolling because the game's about to start. Okay, this is the section showing air movement. Red is hot and blue is cold, and cool air comes in, drops down through these towers, moves through the building laterally, and is exhausted through the thermal chimney, thermal stack effect of the outer skin. So looking back at from the Highway 66 side, now closer to home, this is the Ohio State University Recreation Center. This is the Larkins project. This is $107 million worth of recreation. And it's all student funded. So I'm really under scrutiny here. I thought Austin was tough. So this is coming out of student fees. And you can see that it has a mixed bag of events. So buried over here is a monster weight room fitness center. This is a jogging track that erupts out of the building. It's an elliptical jogging track. And as it goes through the building, you gaze into four-court gyms below, into racquetball on one side, down into a a meeting area with a fireplace, a notch between pieces of the program lead to the natatorium, the competition natatorium that's kind of off the page in the model shot, Big Ten natatorium. So it's seen as a village of uses that all come together in one mega building with a lot of differentiation. So it doesn't seem like a mega building, with almost appearing as though it were 5 or 6 buildings. Here's the arc of a bridge that wraps through and wraps around the building, paralleling the arc of the running track, natatorium beyond. The Danish National Archive in Copenhagen is a competition I was invited to participate in along with Mario Bota, Gunter Banish, and the late Enrique Miralles. And I thought about ancient time, of course, and rune stones, and Viking helmets, and Viking burials, the Gutenberg Bible. Good going. Now, come forward till you find this horizontal, just blow right through. Bonus for the model. Another photovoltaic sail for shade and light filtration. A columnar central space inspired by Terry Gilliam's Brazil. I'll show you that one in a minute. It's set on the plain of Amar, not far in visual touch with the center of Copenhagen, but on this misty plain of canals, and canals used for dissipating heat as we're deploying them in the building idea. The outer skin, a skin that, like the back of an old refrigerator, that radiates heat off from to cool the archives, which collect a lot of heat because of the paper content and moisture, cool and dry the archives. Here's the Terry Gilliam space. I could imagine Robert De Niro rappelling down here to fix some wiring like he did in the movie. I imagine rollerbladers, rollerblader worker bees retrieving archival information and shooting it down to scholars and public. And focus, please. Thank you very much for sorting that problem out. You're my heroes. It's the model. These are all of the energy diagrams. Very green politics there, very important issues. The composition of the plan is more like a collection of pieces that are floating around, more or less radially around the hub of the central space. Now, just to wrap up, 2 very important projects. They just happened. The GSA, the General Services Administration of the federal government, has a program called Design Excellence. I don't know if you've heard of that, where they invite they call lead designers to submit credentials to try to get on short lists for interviews and then try to get in competition. So it's a 3-stage thing. You send in credentials and you do an interview and you get on a short list and then you try to win it. And when I do these, I don't think about losing them. I do try to win them. So these are the beginnings of a competition for Las Cruces, New Mexico, for a federal courthouse. When I parachute into a location, especially one that's unknown to me, let's say like Muncie, here I would do a ball jar. I mean, that would be the building I would do. That's not funny, is it? Because you've already tried. You've already done that. It's like a bad joke. Anyway, no, I wouldn't do that. In Las Cruces, it's my turf. It's my spiritual home. I've jettisoned Missouri long ago. It's where I work. It's south of Albuquerque. So I looked to great writers. Cormac McCarthy, All the Pretty Horses and some other amazing books, defines the frontier in special ways. Las Cruces is very near the frontier. Carlos Castañeda, in his conversations with Don Juan. This is really a great quote. And then Richard Rodriguez, the Code of Hammurabi, the ancient presence of the law, not unlike the runestones of ancient time. I keep talking about ancient time. I also like cyberspace, and it always intersects ancient time. I think you can sort of be nostalgic about ancient time. But when I talk about it, it means to me that architecture isn't just about some building next door that's a certain style, right? Or whether it's, a modern building or whether it's an historic building or Victorian house in San Francisco. Those are all layers of our culture. They're very momentary. In a road cut, there's a vast dimension that goes down below the cultural strata, which is nothing. It's just a vapor compared to Precambrian granite, Pennsylvanian limestone, whatever. So architecture is about that. It's about Hammurabi. It's about this kind of sky. This is a good one. La verdadera lucha es con el duende. Para buscar al duende no hay mapa ni ejercicio. The struggle, you can't search for duende. Duende means elf in Spanish, but it also means spirit. And Garcia Lorca evoked it in his Havana lectures so beautifully. Spirit emerges in your work, by osmosis. If you're passionate, if you engage your spirit in your process, it will come out and people will feel it later on. That's why Garcia Lorca says you can't look for it with any kind of map or controlled exercise. Anyway, his work is so important to me. And this quote from Don Juan, at this time of the day in the twilight, there's no wind. This time there's only power. Architecture can deal with those kinds of essences. For me, it's the mission. It's what it's about, and I'm unrelenting in that search. And sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you blow it. So to do this courthouse, I had to go through those kinds of layers I've encountered. And this sums up a lot of those in kind of just a piece that was a long strip along the bottom of the competition boards. I couldn't present the competition personally. That's not in the rules of GSA. You have to do it anonymously. And you have jurors. The jurors were Michael Rotondi and Julie Snow on this one, and some other good architects. So you had to communicate what you wanted to communicate without doing it face to face. For me, that's a big problem. So anyway, that's what that was about. And then the axes of Las Cruces. Las Cruces means the crossroads. And I thought of the Decumanus and the Cardo of Rome, and how the vertical axis, north-south, connects to Teotihuacan, to Mexico. El Camino Real, that connected Mexico City to Santa Fe. Santa Fe Railroad, the space shuttle up at Alamogordo, one of the landing sites. So technology merging with the land and merging with myth. And so the scheme here beginning to unfold, gazing toward the Organ Mountains and toward Las Esperanzas neighborhood to the east. So the diagrams then show the relationship of this courthouse to its community, how important it was as a bridge, or would be as a bridge, linking the kind of downtown, or what is pretty boring closed street becoming a mall that now they want to open the street again, to this wonderful, vital neighborhood over here with great cementerios and placitas of the culture of Las Esperanzas, of that neighborhood. So the building gazes toward the mountains, the Organ Mountains, this wonderful range, and all these alignments are important ones that the building addresses in some form or another. The courtrooms themselves as shrines of the law, shrines of justice. Think of Hammurabi, think of Justinian, when the law was codified. Go back in time, bring it forward to now, and how important and how critical that lineage is. And then the sorting out the amazingly complex circulation of detainees, of judges, the public, through vertical circulation. It's a real challenge in this kind of building. And then the procession through the building, first starting with the pecan grove matrix, that the kind of agrarian atmosphere of Las Cruces, where the great pecan orchards surround the town, and allowing them to kind of come in and become an urban grid in plazas that surround the building. But the procession through the main entry is security, through, I call them tablets of justice, that you would move through to the lower lobby, up the stairs to the lobby landing, and here the jury orientation space can spill out so the community can engage the building and use it for lectures and gatherings of various sorts. Then on up to the upper lobby. Well, the upper lobby converging the aura of justice with the aura of the high desert. These are copper scrims that reflect and aim toward the mountains. And the perspective is divergent in plan. You can see that it opens up so that it seems closer. When when you reverse perspective, perceptually things seem closer than a Borromini kind of exaggerated perspective. And there's the shot, this beautiful, beautiful digital rendering of by John Frayne. So that's the view toward the mountains. And am I messing with the speakers here? I think you better get out of here. We've had an AV meltdown, and might as well get the speakers next. So here's the what it says. I don't know if you can read all the captions, but a lot of sustainability moves quietly integrated. That's just one subtext in architecture. If you make a list of all the important things, what's at the top? Probably spirit, poetry. And then down here, of course, you're going to be green. You're going to do that, but it's a supporting actor, just like program is in some ways, to some other essence that we seek. I'm an architectural evangelist. I just make this stuff up, and sometimes I get converts and sometimes I don't. Anybody want a job? Okay, you missed your chance. Natural light diagram. All the courtrooms, think about courtrooms, how claustrophobic, the jury in there, the judges, how dumb so many of them are, in the old GSA programs, how debilitating to be there. So we wanted to enliven them, to bring natural light in from three directions by using light shelves and other strategies to bring it in. You can see the divergent perspective, the copper scrims. That was important also, for Castañeda reasons and also for patriotic reasons. Tablet of Justice. Scrims reflecting the mountains. Here's the podium finally where the courtrooms start. So you make that ascent, and of course there's ADA ascent, very well orchestrated through the elevator core right out to these levels. But you make the ascent, and you look out toward the mountains, and the aura of justice surrounds you, and the glowing copper, and the bald eagle that we will train to fly by once a day. And on this side, toward the Las Esperanzas neighborhood, a fiestita going on here. This is a wall of water, an amphitheater spilling out. This is probably a big smoker's amphitheater in reality, okay? But it's also great for performances in the plaza below. Views toward the mountains, obviously, and a breakout space for the lobby. This is a giant clay model compared to the ones I usually do. And I do little models, and I did one on this building. And then I had Matt in my shop. I said, Matt, just make a big clay model, kind of like my little clay model. And of course, there are refinements going on. We bring we've got all our DSL lines into our Ethernet lines in the model shop. So we bring laptops down and just set up a camp out in the model shop while the clay's being cut or whatever's being cut. And this model was made in that context, and me hovering over it with patinated copper and clay as the palette of materials. And that's another model that we internally illuminated. This was all done in 28 days, this competition. And we were against Will Bruder and Enrique Norten from Mexico City. It should be a beacon at night, a beacon of urbanity for Las Cruces. So that's a collage piece. This is the El Paso courthouse process. A collage that deals with Mexico, my journeys through urban experiences and my drawings, and mainly in Rome in this case. The wonderful the landscape that intersects America. And when the World Trade Center is just barely showing there. And that's an unbelievable loss, I mean, besides everything else. When I lectured at the 92nd Street Y in New York one time, the question from the audience was, well, what's your favorite building in New York? I said, it's no favorite building, it's buildings. It's the World Trade Center. They're really, for me, icons of the city. So here's the El Paso sighting situation with Mount Franklin viewed through a notch in the building defining another kind of aperture with the library, the law library spanning across. You can see some of the studies, the early kind of styrofoam blocks, program sorting out, clay, basketball time, clay, other models. Oh my God. Oh, I see what I did. Oh, that was me. That was a pilot error. I think you're kind of getting what all these things mean by now. Solstice alignments, defining a movement of the sun at the lowest angle, making sure the plaza is bathed in sunlight. Even in El Paso, you want that. The aperture through. Same kind of circulation challenge. This is 40 miles from Las Cruces, by the way. And it was done in 1 month, about a month before the Las Cruces competition. When you throw the dice on these GSA competitions, they don't know that you're going to make it. You're going to have 2 projects. And it freaked them out that I won 2 projects. Because the same architect isn't supposed to be doing all these courthouses. But you know, those were the rules. I won the competitions. And they got used to it. Focus. Okay, there's the model, the aperture through. The photovoltaic trellis lobby cover, plenty of sun control there. The columnar copper-skinned courthouse volume with the judge's atrium here where light comes down through, brings light into their chambers and also into the courtrooms multi-directionally. This is all cyber world, really quite distant from my clay models, but I love it, and I hover over these processes, and they're really fun for me, even though I'm illiterate and don't even know what buttons to push or even what the software is called. I'm not saying that's good. It's kind of dumb, actually. I got a Palm Pilot now, though. The bridge. When I showed this to the judge, you know, the judges are worried about somebody shooting them. So he said, well, I'm going to be up there, you know, look in the library, and what if somebody shoots me? How do you answer that? Bulletproof glass. It's in the movies. At least you know you would know who's mad at you. I mean, or if someone was mad at you, it wouldn't hurt you. Might get your attention for a while. And he thinks it's okay now. Judge Briones is a wonderful client. So an urban project. This may be my tallest building. So I want to close on this. Architecture has 9 lives like a cat. And for some reason in South America, cats have 7 lives. La verdad? Un gato tiene siete vidas, ¿no? En vez de 9. Our cats have 9 lives. So in architecture, this is a life of architecture. This performance tonight, whatever you call this, it's not a lecture, it's however you characterize it. Sometimes it's in movies. That's a life. Sometimes it's just a concept in the drawer. That's a life. And there are definitely 9 of them. You can count them, make your own list. This is the movie Gattaca, and my building at Cal Poly Pomona that Joe mentioned is this one. And the thing that really irritated me about this was they didn't tell me Uma was going to be there. They didn't tell me. And the building kind of stars in the film along with Uma and Ethan Hawke, right? And if you want to see more of this building, look at The Imposter with Gary Sinise, and also the Arizona Science Centers and that. For some reason, my buildings are ending up in movies lately. Dark Angel, the University of Wyoming Cone, and Tina Turner MTV piece on the Nelson Fine Arts Center. So I'm really proud when that happens. I think that extends the life of architecture in special ways. So on my journeys, I did a book called Architectural Journeys. Sometimes I'm late. Remember that you saw the Frank Lloyd Wright program by Ken Burns, where he designed Falling Water while Kaufman was on his way to the office? Remember that one, to Taliesin? Well, this is a jet age version of that. I'm on the way to a meeting at Ohio State, and I'm working the model. This is not staged. I actually had to do some work on it. And we size all our models to, 737 overhead dimensions, because they're the smallest. And when you go through security now with these, it looks like plastic explosives, right? This clay I use. So it's really getting old, the kind of shakedown I have to go through. But that's part of it, you got to tough it out. Remember I said the body in architecture. You have to be an athlete, getting through security. And this is at SciArc. This is some of the other things these are some of the other things I do. That's the new SciArc building, which was in construction. This is a gathering of Latin American architecture students, zillions of them, and they're party animals. And they're here partying, and I'm trying to give a lecture from this cherry picker. There's Atlantis, and raising the cherry picker up and down to get the right angle on things and to just show off, have the button to push and just do that. So this is my lifestyle, working on airplanes, doing this, coming to Muncie. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored that you bought a number of my books because I get $1 royalty on each book, so I made about $20 tonight off those books, $30. Keep buying them, but go buy the watches. And thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to finally have this closure here at Ball State University. This wonderful, famous, I'm not kidding you, School of Architecture. It's really on the map. You do great work here. We all know about it. And send me your resumes. I won't promise anything. Now, get to those TV sets.